So, what are red flags? Red flags are things that law enforcement take into consideration when there is a crime. They are things that spike their interest and they have to take into consideration because it raises the probability of specific outcomes. So when we look at the Summer Wells case, what red flags do we have in this case that just cannot be ignored? Now, one of them is the fact that a red flag would be who was the last person to see the victim. Now, in the Summer Wells case, it would appear that Candace made out as if her sons were the last people to see Summer alive because they saw her go outside. So that's the first red flag. The second one is that you would take into consideration the story that's told afterwards. The things that people say who were the last people to see the victim, how that story is put together and how it goes over time and the consistency between all parties. In the Summer Wells case, that story seems to have many, many holes. We've seen it change over time. We've seen certain people change it completely, add things that other people haven't stated earlier, and in some cases they've made it almost seem an improbability. We also look at how people are behaving around the situation, and we've seen situations where Hunter and Ali are seemingly covering something. Why would you be so concerned about the truth? Why would there be manipulations within interviews if there is nothing to hide? If you know nothing, you're no part to do with anything, and there's nothing that could even be misconstrued, why the seeming control of what Hunter was saying in the Chris McDonough interview, which everyone saw? We also look at the behaviours of people closest to the victim. And we have seen Candace. She seems to be monetising her daughter's disappearance. I have not yet seen really any ounce of true and raw emotion that we see in many, many cases of abduction or children being harmed. You know, families are devastated. People fall apart. Relationships do fall apart. We've seen Don end up in prison, jail. We've seen multiple situations arise that raise eyebrows. We also look at the probability of things, looking at statistics in cases. Now, I'm going to say this. There are only a handful of outcomes in the Summer Wells case. And that is that she was abducted by a stranger. And now, she was abducted by a stranger. Now, this is likely for sexual gratification. That is what we've learned in the past, in the huge amount of statistics that are out there. And in a massive, massive proportion of those, it's very, very quick that the victim is found. And it's very, very rare that the victims in this style of abduction are not found. And in fact, the other option would be abduction because of sexual trafficking. Now, that could be unbeknown to the parents, it could be known to the parents. But in these cases, it is much more likely that a child is abducted and then not seen. So you can see where we're already heading. Because of what we know about this case, it's more probable that Summer was abducted for the purpose of trafficking. Another red flag would be that this area specifically has a history of trafficking. And another red flag would be that the family would be considered high risk because of their involvement in drugs, because of their involvement in alcohol, because of the secluded nature of their home, because of who they've been involved in the past, which would be another red flag on its own. The people who they have chosen to consider friends. Not mentioning any names, but I've got other videos that touch on specific people who themselves have missing female members of the family. Going down that route, another red flag would be that this family already has a missing and not seen again female. And you may think, look, this has got nothing to do with it. It's got no connection. You're clutching at straws. But it's a red flag. In the eyes of the law, and being thorough, that's a red flag. Another option would be that Summer was abducted for the purpose of giving her a better life. Someone just got sick of watching what was going on. They probably knew something about the probabilities that surrounded them and where this was going to head. So then do we not take into consideration that the church mayn't be involved? Again, this is a probability because it's one of the options that we have available to us. Abduction by stranger, abduction for trafficking, abduction for a better life. We also have familial abduction. Could Summer be hidden within the family? We've seen cases recently where families have hidden children. It could be that Summer was hidden because of a certain upcoming situation that could have raised issues. And maybe this is why we are seeing a complete lack of emotion, because there is nothing really to be emotional about. Summer's safe. Summer's well, because Summer's being hidden. Other alternatives would be an accident on the property. And there are red flags there. Some people rule it out, but any home, any garden can pose a risk of injury and a subsequent cover-up if people feel that there is a need for covering up. And you may not want to hear it, you may not want to agree, but there are only so many options in this story. There are only so many things that could have happened to Summer, and one of them options is going to be right. So it's you picking which one you want to be right. There are always exceptions to the rules, but at the moment, the least probable option is that Summer was abducted by a stranger.